began on the internet as an online satirical political campaign.
India is also witnessing a Gen Z protest. They want the Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan to resign.
पेपर जो लीक हुआ है उससे बच्चे परेशान हैं, हम भी स्टूडेंट्स ही हैं। एक स्टूडेंट की बात नहीं है, आने वाले कल और जो अभी जो चल रहा है उन सब की बात है।
Why are they here? From where are they? Who are they? Are they students?
मेरी मम्मी ने बोला है कि आना तो इस्तीफा लेके आना।
या तो आप लड़ लो या ये देश छोड़ के चले जाओ।
Here students are agitating about reforming the education system.
We do not want to make this whole protest political.
Big development. India's youth have just scored a major political win. Dharmendra Pradhan, the Union Education Minister, has submitted his resignation.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Welcome to On Point, and I'm Kartikeya Sharma. Today we have 3 On Points lined up for you. In On Point 1, we examine China's new Ice Silk Road through Arctic. China is building an alternative trade corridor amid West Asia crisis. Is the Ice Silk Road the future of China-Europe trade? In On Point 2, we look at the controversy surrounding AK-47 used during NEET protests. The Bihar government tells Supreme Court that the constable who carried AK-47 was trapped by protesters. So the question is, can security personnel carry an AK-47 during civilian protests? In On Point 3, we speak to novelist Meena Kandasamy, whose latest novel, Fieldwork as a Sex Object, examines the intersection of technology, misogyny, politics and power. Chinese-Russian relationship is leading to opening of a new chapter in global shipping, and this time through Arctic. Chinese container shipping company Sea Legend has launched a regular seasonal cargo service between China and Europe through Russia's Northern Sea route running through the Arctic coastline. The route has been named the Ice Silk Road. The service connects eastern China with Europe, passing through the Bering Strait and along Russia's Arctic coast before heading towards northern Europe. And the biggest attraction is the time it could save. A voyage from China to Europe through this Arctic route takes 20 days. That compares with more than 40 days through Suez Canal and around 50 days if ship travels around the Cape of Good Hope. The new route comes at a crucial time for global shipping. The conflict in West Asia has disrupted key maritime choke points, including Bab al-Mandeb Strait and the Strait of Hormuz. The Bab al-Mandeb connects the Red Sea with the Gulf of Aden and is a critical gateway for ships heading towards Suez Canal. At the same time, disruption around Strait of Hormuz has affected one of the world's most important energy corridors. That has increased interest in alternative trade routes. And this is where China's Arctic initiative becomes strategically significant. It brings China very, very close to Russia. For Beijing, the northern route provides another Europe-Asia trade corridor and reduces dependence on the traditional route which passes through West Asia and Suez Canal. It also strengthens China's commercial presence in Arctic. Russia is already trying to expand activity along the Northern Sea route with its state nuclear company Rosatom providing navigation permits and nuclear-powered icebreakers. But there's a major limitation. The Arctic route is seasonal. Heavy winter ice makes navigation difficult, meaning it cannot yet function like a year-round replacement for Suez. There are also questions about infrastructure, weather, and the long-term viability of large-scale commercial shipping through Arctic. But the question here is that with the climate change taking place, Arctic in next 50 years will be ice-free most of the year. And keeping that in mind, it's going to change the dynamics of both defense, economy, and the strategic relationship between Russia and China. So this is going to be the Russian leverage. And if this is the Russian leverage, which comes with the Chinese technology, what does it mean for the global trade? What does it mean for the global defense? What does it mean for the global mining? What does it mean for the world at large when the Arctic becomes ice-free? On this issue, I'm joined by Professor Swaran Singh from JNU and Anushka Saxena, research analyst at the TAK. What does it mean for the world in terms of defense, economy, and the strategic deepening of ties between China and Russia?
Thank you, Karthika. This is a development which is definitely going to draw attention, but it's also been long term in the making, in that sense. When China in 2013 became observer of Arctic Council, then on developed interest in Arctic region in general, and all the way in 2017, when for the first time President Xi Jinping in his meeting with Prime Minister then Medvedev had mentioned exploring the northern route, and now we see gradually last year, for example, ships from 15 to 23 last year. So gradual progression is there. What makes it interesting is the context. The fact that Iran war has seen weaponization of choke points, both by the Houthis and by Iranians, this therefore becomes far more attractive, and perhaps yes, speculations about future, as you mentioned, in terms of 50 years, yes, it could become a major route, and then therefore kind of transform a global map of global shipping and commerce. But at this stage, I think it is definitely little more than hedging, but it's not yet pivoting, because as you mentioned yourself, it's a seasonal route, and of course, coming and disappearing of ice seasonally will also create certain issues of production. So it's not replacing Suez Canal or the southern route as of now. But yes, potentially, and in the context of choke points being weaponized, it looks really something to carefully look at. Context of the no limits friendship of Russia and China, which also makes it really potentially a game changer in that sense.
Okay.
But it's going to be a piecemeal progression at best, in my understanding.
Okay. Anusha, going by the way climate change is coming into effect, a lot of people say that it's almost irreversible now. If we say that the certain aspects of climate change are irreversible, which is 1 degree or 1.5 degree, we are looking at a loose Arctic. What does it mean in context of, I asked Professor Swaran Singh on the issue of economy, but from the context of defense, American eagerness to take over Greenland and the Chinese presence in the Arctic with Russian cooperation. Because I remember years ago I had gone to Vladivostok, and they had put a huge, I would say, canvas of their floating nuclear icebreaker and a floating nuclear reactor, to my horror.
Right. Well, I think, yeah, the fundamental of this Ice Silk Road goes back in time to the fact and the idea that Russia has weaponized the potential authorities UN clause Article 234 imposes on countries that have a lot of ice in their contiguous zone or territorial waters, right? And those countries are allowed to impose certain restrictions on the movement of freight or seek certain assurances in the name of environmental protection or vis-a-vis their duty towards environmental protection. What Russia has been able to do over the years, because it is such a large Arctic power, despite the fact that most other members of the Arctic Council are NATO members, what Russia has been able to do is take that idea of the authority vested in it as a country with waters in icy zones and impose literal barriers to the movement of freight and cargo along the Northern Sea route. And even though those weren't the powers vested in it, it has been able to manipulate it precisely because it has that capability of floating nuclear resistant storm breakers and large vessels, right? As a consequence of which, it is seeking permits from all countries that want to traverse the Northern Sea route and take trade up to Europe, which is not really in the name of environmental protection anymore, right? It is a sanction, it is a barrier created by Russia. Now, where the Chinese got lucky is precisely what the issue of hot debate today is, right? That they're friends with the Russians. And even though their investment in the Ice Silk Road so far is only some small, unpopular shipbuilders like Sea Legend here and there, right? It's not Costco or CFSC, the really big ones. The fact remains that today it is just a few tons of cargo or 3 months a year. Over time, it can expand. It doesn't necessarily solve China's import problem because LNG and oil still continues to come through Bab el Mandab and the Strait of Hormuz for China, but it does to some extent provide a growing alternative for exports. And that is where the big problem is because it has Russian support, which is something all countries around the world are going to need if they want to traverse that loose Arctic. And China is already gaining an edge over and above all of them. So the dilemma facing the Arctic Council and NATO is essentially this. Can compliance, can sanctions alone solve the problem of Russian dominance over Arctic sea routes? Or do they need to activate the NATO sentry or the Arctic sentry as they call it and go for actual military measures to be able to dismantle that dominance, even if they're looking at a 50 years timeline to dismantle it, right? And that is the question that's going to be facing the world, which is where China is already gaining an edge, even if it is seasonal and even if it is dependent a lot on ice, right?
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, what does an iceless Arctic means for the world?
I think first of all, enormous potential of resources that could be explored and found there. And the first mover advantage will go to China and Russia in that sense. As far as Arctic Council is concerned, they primarily focus on environmental issues like oil spills and things like that. And they do recognize Russian authority on the northern route in that sense. So that's not in question. Whether they could politically influence some kind of new standards of norms of shipping and other things, that is something which is indirectly possible. But opening of Arctic, as you mentioned, in coming 4 or 5 decades, disappearance of ice, which I was reading, Southampton University's report has said last season, ice making was reduced by 5.8%. So there is a certain acceleration, and it could become kind of year-round shipping possibility. So other than enhancing the frequency and the tonnage of ships that will use this route, I think the focus will also go on all kinds of resources that could be available. And this route also suits a certain kind of Chinese exports, lithium-ion batteries or photovoltaic products, etc., which are better in not going around the equator where it is relatively hot weather in that sense. So Chinese, being the first mover, will have their advantage definitely, but this is going to attract other countries. I understand India is also in conversation with Russia on this being potentially a route to be explored by Indian shipping as well. So India definitely is not the only country. This is confirmed by Minister of External Affairs spokesperson that India is in conversation with Russia on the subject. So there could be other countries, but China's size of shipping, China's size of exports, and China's leverages in terms of financial technical wherewithal would give it a first mover advantage, particularly because of the bonhomie that it enjoys with Russia, which apparently has an exclusive authority on the northern route so far until things change in future. But whether this is going to make other routes less attractive, that I'm not very sure, not as of now, because other southern route will also continue to be used extensively, because global trade is only going to increase in coming times. So in that sense, yes, it's a potentially game changer, not in short term. It's not a game changer in short term to me.
It's a game changer. You are saying potentially not in short run, but in the long run. Anushka, climate change will be weaponized. There is no doubt about it. Countries think from the perspective of national interest, whether it's route, whether it's trade, whether it's minerals down there, whether it's deployment of forces. But what does it mean for Russia-China synergy? Can you break that down for our viewers? Because ultimately it's Russia which is allowing. China is the front, but Russians are allowing it. That's the key part. The Putin has allowed Chinese.
Right. Well, I think because the dilemma facing the world today is where else to take our sea-based trade, if not through the choke points that have dominated it so far, may it be the Strait of Hormuz, may it even be the circumvention around Cape Town. The fact that with China's support, Russia is able to provide that alternative, though seasonal in the short term, may be more consequential in the long term, matters, and which is what which essentially makes this a geopolitical more than a climate change related issue, even though climate change is being weaponized, right? Because what Russia is doing with the Chinese is that jointly they are enabling an alternative for these for sea-based trade at a time when the US, when the West wants to weaponize all other choke points that they have dominated so far. And even with Suez, for example, the Egyptians have no interest in either stopping Chinese cargo or weaponizing their dominance over that choke point to be able to benefit either the US or the Chinese, right? They want that dominance to hold. For that, that choke point has to be free. But if the Chinese and Russians go out and say that no, okay, we've been able to build this alternative, it essentially puts the West on high alert. It puts NATO on high alert, and at the same time poses a dilemma to the rest of the world, including India, which is trying to navigate through those waters using the Chennai Vladivostok route or even INSTC, right? India has wanted to use INSTC to expand trade related opportunities with the Russians. But the Russians are telling Indians and the rest of the world that no, look, we have Sea Legend, we have this no limits ally that we can expand on commercial alternatives with, and everyone else just going to have to either get the permits issued from us or use any other route, no matter how available or how unavailable it is. So it's putting the rest of the world at the mercy of the Americans, at the mercy of the West, and even at the mercy of the Egyptians and the Iranians, if all these choke points matter, until and unless that is that the China-Russia coalition or the China-Russia partnership is consulted, and eventually the Northern Sea Route or the Ice Silk Road opens up to the rest of the world. And this is exactly how climate change is being weaponized in the years to come.
But Professor Swaran Singh, there is also another aspect which people don't get into. This trade can make things cheaper. The bottom line of any trade is you make things cheaper. This will definitely make it cheaper.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The fact that the trials that Sea Legend did last October came to conclusion that it takes between 18 to 21 days from Ningpo to Felixstowe in UK. Compared to the southern route taking around 40 days. So there's enormous, the time is cut by half. And that definitely is going to make things cheaper, which again become much more interesting angle because given the fact that choke points of Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb are in difficulty, the shipping premiums have gone up, insurance premiums have gone up. So that also makes this very attractive, that if the time cost is being cut from 40 to 20 days, indeed that will also make things and exports cheaper in that sense. And this is going to, let me just say two quick things. This is going to open transactions on both sides. It's not only Chinese exports going to Europe, European exports also coming to Asia through this route, except that if large part of shipping is by Chinese, then they will get that advantage. And second, when Arctic becomes iceless, potentially we are talking of 50 years, and there are going to be other routes. For example, Canadian Arctic route, Arctic route of the northwestern routes will also open up. So there would be other potential possibilities of shipping. At this moment, because China seems to be, fairly aggressive in pushing this idea and implementing it, and this looks like China is taking the lead and has a first mover advantage. But once this route starts becoming attractive, you will see other stakeholders also showcasing certain amount of interest, other routes also opening, using the same Arctic without snow, potentially all simply open route throughout the year. But at this stage, as my colleague is saying, it's basically 3 to 4 months. It's a very seasonal and also partly unpredictable, uncertain during the times of ice setting and ice melting. It's a attractive, great game changer idea, but potentially is how I understand it.
Okay, and I'll take the closing comment from Anushka. Anushka, obviously, we always look at it from the perspective of game changing. Will it also lead to a sort of a denser military deployment?
Right.
I mean, we have to also see from the possibility of a movement means movement of everything. Submarine,
Right.
destroyer, frigates, now unmanned, vehicles. So it means denser military environment.
Right, absolutely. Right, just one point on the geopolitics on this becoming cheaper, and which relates to the point about defense deployment, right? One thing is that the South West Hampton University study, if I'm not incorrect about the university that conducted it, talks about ice melting, and we've discussed climate change being irreversible. But the fact is that shipping operates massively on insurance premiums and the guarantees that come in from there. If there is no global trust in a shipping route, as for example, we already know from the fact that Maersk, which is one of the world's biggest cargo and shipping companies, has refused to use the Ice Silk Road, means that shipping premiums are going to be massive for any third party, cargo company wanting to come in,
Okay.
and they're going to shoot up, and it's in that sense it's going to make it expensive, right? That said,
Okay.
in terms of that said, as the route opens up, defense deployment is most likely to heighten because NATO has already put up the Arctic sentry in place.
Yes.
Because they expect that as
Okay.
nuclear storm breakers break through, submarines will become a common presence, and so will unmanned submarines.
Okay,
So
Prof.
yeah, that's going to likely be a development.
Professor, 30 seconds. I've really run short of time. The other guests waiting.
Thank you. 30 seconds. It's not like open oceans. You remember Iran repeatedly talks of not allowing military warships to use that choke point of Strait of Hormuz. It's still under Russian authority. So it's not going to see free flowing, shipping military ships around. So it's a different case.
It's going to be a different case. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Anushka, for joining me on this subject. It's fascinating how climate change, which is a big bane for this, entire humanity, is getting weaponized in a different way. And we are talking about the potentials of a melting Arctic. But the fact of the matter is that it's going to affect the larger geology, temperature, and poor people. Thank you for both of you for joining me. And this is all I had on point 2. But on the other side, we're going to talk about the AK-47 controversy and why was it issued. Can security forces carry an AK-47 during a civilian protest? That question is now at the center of the Supreme Court case involving the police response to student protests in Bihar, Siwan. The Bihar government has filed an affidavit before the Supreme Court explaining why a constable fired 4 rounds from an AK-47 during protest at JP Chowk on July 25th. According to the state's version, the constable was trapped and surrounded by protesters. The government says he fired the rounds in the air to extricate himself. Importantly, the state has also admitted that an AK-47 is not meant for routine law and order situations. In its affidavit, the Bihar government described the AK-47 as a platoon-level weapon meant for special operations and not law and order situations. The constable Abhishek Kumar has since been suspended and departmental proceedings have been initiated against him for what the state called undesired conduct. The government has also denied that anyone was injured by the AK-47 firing. So what are the rules when police face an aggressive crowd? The standard approach is supposed to be a graded response. It begins with warnings, then comes measures such as tear gas and water cannons, followed by physical crowd control measures. Firearms are supposed to be last resort when there is an imminent threat to life or serious violence. The document also says that the uncontrolled area firing is discouraged in dense civilian areas because of the risk from falling bullets and the possibility of triggering a stampede. That brings us to the larger issue. If an AK-47 is not a crowd control weapon, should personnel carrying such weapons even be deployed in civilian protests? And if a policeman is genuinely surrounded or faces an immediate threat, what is the legally and operationally permitted response on this issue? I'm joined by IPS Yashuvardhan Azad, former Special Director, Intelligence Bureau and Secretary Security, Government of India. Sir, my question to you is, can this weapon be issued to a policeman who is being deployed to tackle civil protests in civil area, not in a disturbed area?
No, AK-47 can never be deployed for any law and order or crowd and control. Never. It's not meant to be used in civilian duties. AK-47 is a different thing altogether. It's used for as a platoon level insurgency areas and other places, but not for crowd control. In Bihar, for example, you see, they have agreed, the Bihar government has agreed that AK-47 is not a weapon for crowd control. But they should explain as to why that person was over there. I mean, it's all right to suspend him, but at whose orders was he deployed at that place? And in what capacity? That's an extremely important thing, because you don't issue AK-47 from the armory for a law and order call out. So
actually, that was my question. How was it issued? Deployment is the second part.